Welcome to the second video in this series where I will be breaking down the top 10 teams going into the 2026 college football season, looking at their roster, their coaching changes, their scheme changes, anything you need to know to do an in-depth deep dive on these college football teams. Coming in today as my number 9 ranked team are the Texas A&M Aggies, as much as it pains me to say that as a Longhorns fan. My number 10 ranked team was the Ole Miss Rebels. If you want to go and check that video out, it'll be linked in the description below. Please go and pay that a visit after you've watched this one. You can get fully caught up on my top 10 series. If you haven't seen the Ole Miss video, the way we do this is we break down the coaching changes in the offseason, the roster changes in the offseason, what the roster looks like going into this year, giving different players a grade, and then we're going to go through and look at these schemes, both offense and defense, what these coaches are running and what it's going to take for these teams to succeed, and then we'll end the video off with an in-depth schedule review where I will pick and predict every game way too early. Quick shout out to Marcus from That Franchise Guy for inspiring the series. This is not meant to copy him in any way, but it is meant to be kind of inspired by the deep dive series that he does looking at all 32 NFL teams. I don't know how he does 32 teams. I couldn't imagine doing more than 10. This is the most we'll get for now, but when the season starts, I will be doing in-depth game breakdowns, game reviews, game previews, all of the above to help you feel more prepared to watch college football. With that said, let's get into the number 9 team, Texas A&M. It pains me to say this as a Texas fan, but I do think that A&M will be pretty good once again. Since there weren't too many coaching changes to go over, we'll go ahead and do a little season review from 2025 just to kick this video off. A&M had what I think is safe to say their best season in basically a decade, unless you count that COVID season where they could have made the playoff and it was really strange. I think they ended up playing North Carolina. They started off 2026 with a massive road win against Notre Dame, and that was their first road victory in like over a decade. I think since 2014 Auburn. Correct me if I'm wrong, fans in the comments. Either way, it was a massive game for A&M. They pulled off a win there in South Bend, and rewatching that game for this video, I'm shocked that they won. Truthfully. I mean, there were flaws all over the place, but they went out and got it done with an insane ending, and truthfully, tip of the cap to them because it is an impressive win. Even though Notre Dame did not end up making the playoff, they were still a very good team, and it was a great win that Texas A&M had. But then they rattled off win after win after win against the SEC, and people were really starting to take them seriously, especially after a huge road victory at LSU in Death Valley. That game kind of put Marcel Reed on the map as this fringe Heisman candidate, which we'll talk a lot about today, don't worry, but it got Brian Kelly fired, and A&M was probably at their peak at that moment, I would say. They ended up going on the road to play Mizzou and winning that game as well, which, yes, Matt Zoller was the quarterback, but that Mizzou defense was still pretty good, and they blew them out in the end, so I'll give them credit where it's due. And then they played South Carolina at home, and that's where the chips in the armor kind of started to show for this team. When you really watch that game, it is shocking that they ended up winning, and it was kind of a tale of two halves for Marcel Reed, which is, once again, we'll get into Marcel Reed, but that kind of explains him as a player. There are some moments where you watch and you're like, oh my gosh, this dude is one of the best players on the field, the best player on the field today. And then there's other you watch and you're like, how are you a Division I starting quarterback? But regardless, they ended up winning that game, and I think this was the best that A&M fans have felt in a while about their luck. I mean, let's face it, Aggie fans have been through a lot with this team. The Texas 8-4 jokes have some validity to them. They always seem to find ways to lose. If you look at Auburn in 2024, and that could have been South Carolina this year, but they ended up pulling it out. And I think that's something that this fan base hasn't seen in a really long time. But then they walk into DKR after Thanksgiving on a fateful Friday night. And I won't gloat too much about this game, but it was very interesting from my perspective going into it. I thought that there were very valid arguments about A&M's strength of schedule. Like, it is a thing when you don't play any team in the top half of the SEC. How much have you really been tested? We could talk about LSU, and I think that was a big win, but let's face it, that team became a shell of itself, and we realized that after the game. But they still had the win against Notre Dame, and this team was very good. So I wasn't exactly optimistic going into the game, but I figured that we could pull it off. And Texas ended up winning, kind of blowing them out in the second half, really. It just became a beatdown physically in the trenches, and I think that's something that A&M hadn't really experienced thus far. There were chips in their running defense, which we'll get to when we get to the scheme breakdown, but that started to show, and then it really just all tumbled down against Miami in the college football playoff, where they lost 10-3. Now, as an A&M fan, I feel like you still have to be very happy with how the 2025 season went. You made the college football playoff, you hosted a playoff game, you were one of the best teams in the country, flat out. I don't think anyone will argue against that. You had a very exciting young quarterback take steps in his development, and you had a great coach who proved that he belongs on that team. So there's a lot to be happy about, especially going into 2026. So now let's take a look at what's changed in College Station and what are they going to look like going into next year. I will take this time to kindly ask you to like the video. A little football will appear when you do it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. It's what allows me to put it out and keep going and keep bringing you these in-depth deep dives, so please hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me. The biggest change on the coaching staff is the departure of offensive coordinator Collin Klein, who I'll argue with A&M fans about this all day. He was a great offensive coordinator, and that is a loss. He had some questionable moments, which I'll talk about in a minute, but overall, he was a very good coordinator for this offense. They also did lose defensive coordinator Jay Bateman, as he is taking the defensive coordinator job over at Kentucky, but this isn't a huge loss since it's Mike Elko's defense, which is probably why he was willing to take a downgrade in terms of the program, because he'll actually get to call plays at Kentucky, whereas Mike Elko obviously had a big role in the defense at A&M. They replaced those guys with Holman Wiggins and Lyon Hemphill respectively, but we'll talk a little bit about Holman Wiggins today since I think he's gonna have more of an impact on this team. Wiggins was at Alabama from 2019 to 2023, where he famously coached Devontae Smith during his Heisman season. In 2021, he got a little increase in title of assistant head coach of the offense, whatever that means. And then he took the wide receivers coach job at Texas A&M in 2024. Wiggins has a great repertoire as a coach. I mean, he had large successes as a recruiter and a developer of talent. His recruits list looks great, but when we look at the players he actually coached, it consists of Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Jamison Williams, John Mechie, for those who remember, and then Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver at A&M. Wiggins has never called plays in his long coaching career. That is the big asterisk here. How will he adapt to being able to actually go out there, pick up the play sheet, and be calling this offense? Situational awareness. Yeah, he's been a great coach. He's been in the game for a long time, but that responsibility hasn't fallen on him until this point. So it's a big step for him. I know A&M fans were skeptical of the promotion internal and not going out and seeking a better coordinator, but it was kind of a weird market where a lot of the best coordinators in college football are going to be looking for jobs to be a head coach at other programs. So how enticing is it really to make a lateral move when you could go be a head coach? I'll focus on Collin Klein's offense during the scheme section since not much is going to change, I wouldn't think. The only thing that we'll really need to talk about are the situational play calling. Klein got a lot of criticism for his play calling in big games, and there are plenty of threads begging for him to be fired on Reddit and on Twitter. I want to make this clear, Klein's play design and scheme are fantastic. That is a genuine loss, but there is some truth in the criticism of his play calling. The 3rd and 2 decision to launch the deep ball against Texas this year, I have no clue what that was. The goal line stand against Texas last year, this goal line throw toss thing against South Carolina. I think sometimes he was just doing too much, but he's only 36 years old. He has a lot of coaching experience, but most of the top coaches in the sport are much older. So we'll see if Klein can learn from this at his alma mater, Kansas State. Outside of those two departures, not a ton changed on the coaching staff. Mike Elko is still there after signing an extension after 2 years, and I don't fully understand the extending the coach after 1.5 years of the program, but that's beyond me. And we will discuss Mike Elko in the defensive scheme section because he truly is a great coach. He's a great defensive mind. This is a fit in College Station. There's no other way to say it. He's turned this program's culture around, and they're probably going to continue to get better and recruiting better. They're on a roll right now, so shout out to the Aggie fans, you found your head coach. Where they did make some changes though was on the roster. A&M set a record with 10 draft picks this past season. That included 7 in the first 3 rounds, and that's no minor thing. It takes a lot to replace that much talent, and it's not something that A&M has had to do in years past. I mean, this is a new record for them. This is a turning of the tide. You can see all the draft picks on the screen here, some pretty big names. Losing Casey Concepcion is a huge loss. He was a receiver that I loved when he was in the portal, and then I had him as my 4th rated receiver in the draft this year. I was terrified of him going into the Texas game, and they did replace him, but we'll get there. They lost pretty much the whole defensive line with Cassius Howell, Tyler Onyedem, and Albert Regis all going to the NFL. Behind those guys were players like Will Lee and Torian York, who are huge losses for the Aggies, especially York with his leadership. And then, of course, there's the entire offensive line. Armaj Reed Adams, Trey Zune, Chase Pisanis, and Demetrius Crownover all got drafted, and then center Mark Nebu Jr. is the only one remaining. I feel like this season is a bit of a turning point for A&M, and I'm not just saying that because it's Elko in his 3rd year. I don't think there really should be any pressure on his 3rd year, especially after you basically overachieved last year. I mean, I think we can say that. The expectations were not to go 11-1 and make the college football playoff, but I do think it's interesting to see. You lost a lot of talent to the NFL draft, and that's a good thing. I mean, you'd much rather lose talent to the draft than to the portal. But now we get to see, is the roster that deep, or was it centered around one class that had a lot of good players in it and now you're going to fall off a little bit? Now we'll move on to the transfer portal and talk about what happened there. And I actually think that A&M fared pretty well. They took in much better guys than they lost, I would say. In terms of their losses, we'll start off with Theo Mellon-Orstrom, who is basically a starting tight end, splitting time with 2nd round pick Nate Porkacher. Mellon Nordstrom wasn't anything special, but he posted 19 catches, 168 yards, and a touchdown. He had some splash plays here and there. What's surprising is that he was at A&M for 4 years and then transferred out when he was going to be the presumed starter to go to SMU. Not sure what the move was there, if it was monetary or not, or they just weren't really liking what they were seeing anymore, but I do think that he probably would have started had he stayed. Javon Thomas was another loss and another SMU addition. Not sure what the pipeline from A&M to SMU is, but maybe they just want to live in an actual city. Thomas was mainly a depth piece, but he's another guy who probably would have had the chance to start this year. Then there's Rylan Kennedy, which in my opinion is a bigger loss. He was projected to be a flex starter as a stand-up edge rusher for A&M. He looked pretty dynamic in his limited time last season, but he still needs to add mass and grow into an every down player. But as a pass rusher, there's a lot of potential there. Now still, all of the best talent from A&M went to the draft, not to the portal, and that's a great sign for your college football program. I think they made plenty of moves to address this loss of talent though, so let's break down who they brought in from the transfer portal, and there's a lot more names here than there are on the guys out. We'll start off with Isaiah Horton because he is a truly dynamic wide receiver. I think he has the ability to be a true number one, true X. He is going to be a problem if Marcel Reed can find him downfield. I don't think Horton is as good as Concepcion was. They're very different prospects. Concepcion was more of the mold of their other playmakers like Terry Bussey and Mario Craver. Horton is something that this offense did not have last year, and that is a big body, downfield threat who can go up and get it and win 50-50 balls. They didn't have a guy that really did that consistently last year, especially in the red zone. It is not a coincidence that they ended up with Horton. I know that they were in the Cam Coleman sweepstakes, but I don't think Isaiah Horton is just we have Cam Coleman at home because his skill set is exactly what A&M needs, and this is a targeted signing. At Alabama, he was a red zone weapon, and that was Marcel Reed's biggest weakness as a passer. I think the hope is that with the receiver who can go up and get it, some of those throws that would sail over receivers' heads last year will end up caught. He's not the fastest guy. I don't know what he looks like as a true NFL prospect, but he does do something very needed for Texas A&M, and if any team needed Isaiah Horton, it is them. Then they replaced essentially the entire offensive line with two LSU offensive linemen, Tyree Adams and Cohen Eccles, bolstering the left side. On the right side, they got Trovon Baugh from South Carolina and Wilkin Formby from Alabama. We'll start off with Trovon Baugh. He's a bit of a case study. He was really good at South Carolina as a freshman, and then he just didn't play in 2024. And then he did play in 2025, but he was a not so great player on a really terrible offensive line. And you'll see that this is a trend as we continue to talk about their portal guys. Baugh was the product of some really bad coaching at South Carolina, so I think you have to take his play with a grain of salt. He's shown flashes of being really good before. It's just weird to kind of see him fall off during his college career, and you kind of think what happened. But then you look at South Carolina as a program since then, and it's just been a really strange place to be. So that's one of the guys that I don't put too much weight in his performance from last year. There's obviously still potential here, but I didn't give him a grade because didn't feel comfortable doing that based on the inconsistency. Now let's talk the two LSU guys though. If you watched LSU last year, getting two LSU offensive linemen doesn't really sound intriguing, and I can't say that it is, to be honest. Tyree Adams was the right tackle for LSU last season, and honestly, I did think he was better than left tackle Carius Kern, who went to Ole Miss, so I guess that counts for something. He's a redshirt junior, he's got plenty of experience. The problem with Adams comes from his run blocking. He has a ways to go there. His hand usage is pretty terrible, to be honest. He's got to get faster and stronger there. Then there's Cohen Eccles, who played left guard, and I don't think he's that bad. Like, this offensive line was just so dysfunctional, and a lot of it was them not playing as a unit and legit looking lost. They'd see a stunt or a simulated pressure and act like they just discovered fire for the first time, like they had no clue what to do. Eccles isn't anything to write home about, but he definitely can compete for a starting job, and I'm assuming he'll get it as of now, but who knows. I still don't love bringing in 4 starters from not so great offensive lines, and we'll get to Formby in a second, but it just makes me slightly uncomfortable if I'm a fan going into this, knowing that you've got some of the worst line play in the SEC last year joining your team. Now we'll move on to Alabama tackle Wilkin Formby. Let's start off with this. Formby can't run block. Adams can't run block. Formby especially can't block in space or on the move, and we'll talk about A&M's scheme later, but newsflash, they're going to run the rock, and they're going to make those linemen move, so something's got to give here. If Formby can play guard, then I actually like this. I think he's better there where he can just go and maul. He's not a good enough athlete to be a full-time tackle. The problem is I think he basically has to be a tackle to start because the other two they brought in are surefire guards, unless they're planning on going with guys that are already on the team, but I don't know why you bring in all these, I guess you could say, high caliber transfers if you're just going to go with internal players. Wilkin Formby is not who I'd want starting a tackle, just straight up. I don't think he can handle speed rushers for the life of him. He has way too many penalties. His run blocking's a liability. I know you needed to get somebody, but this is the 4th new starter now where I'm like, I
I don't know, Jim.
We'll grade this out later, but it's a true question mark for me. I'm not sure about it. Then they added 2 new tight ends in Houston Thomas and Richie Anderson, both of which will be playing for them, and this is going to be a whole new look tight end room. I hadn't heard of Houston Thomas until this video, if I'm being honest with you. He's a transfer from UTSA, but he's from College Station, so this will be a homecoming for him. He had 34 catches for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns, including 7 catches for 77 yards against USF. Funny enough, what you're watching right now is him playing against Texas A&M, where he caught 2 passes. He took a lot of snaps from the slot in this game. Sadly, the only one that I was able to watch was this game, so I can't tell you much more about him. I would expect him to be the receiving option at tight end, especially based on the other guys they got, but all that remains to be seen. Like I said, I didn't have access to too much film on him, so we're going off of what we know. Then there is Richie Anderson from Fresno State, and I like him from the brief review I did on him. He's a really willing blocker. He has the size. He seems to have the strength, but we'll see how that holds up against SEC competition. I do see him as more of the inline threat between the two, like he'll do more of the dirty work for digging out ends and getting in space to block on some unique screens that they'll run. He only had 300 yards receiving, but that was good for 2nd on the team at Fresno State. So he'll probably enjoy being part of a better offense this season where 300 yards would not be 2nd best receiving on the team. Then they added 2 guys on the defensive line in Onto Saka and CJ Mims. Onto Saka was probably the bigger name. He's an edge rusher out of Northwestern. He is interesting. I like this fit a lot. I think that he was a bigger name coming out of 2024 than he was in 2025 because he did regress a bit, but there's some reasons for that. One of them is the system. He loops and stunts a lot. I don't think he gets many chances to really shine one-on-one against tackles on deep dropbacks to get after the quarterback. There just weren't many chances for highlights. He put on a good bit of weight this past year too, and honestly, I don't know if that was the best move. It would not surprise me at all if he lost a little bit of that going into this season and looked like he did back in 2024. I just think he looked much faster and more explosive then. I don't have the All-22 from his 2024 season, but when you watch the highlights, it's a pretty decent difference in terms of playing style. Last year, he played as more of a sawed-off, bulldoze-you type of edge rusher. He's listed at 6'4", 255, but he plays with great pad level, and when he runs full force, it is like a freight train coming at you. At the weight he was playing at, that's what really shined to me. He can play stand-up or with his hand in the dirt. I'm just interested to see how A&M is going to use him. I do think he's a better run defender than what they had last year with Cassius Howell, but this is not a replacement for the speed and the terror that Cassius Howell brought. I don't really see a world where Onto Saka leads the SEC in sacks unless it's like cleanup sacks or coverage sacks, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think he'll be good, but I don't know if he's the type of caliber of player that's going to replace what Cassius Howell brought you. Then there's CJ Mims, who slots in as the Albert Regis replacement. I actually don't have any All-22 film on North Carolina, and there's no highlights of him on YouTube, so I think he's good. I've heard he's good. We'll find out. Ricky Gibson III is another projected starter that they signed from Tennessee. He missed the 2025 season due to injury, but he looked good in 2024, like really, really, really good. There was talk of him and Jermod McCoy being the best duo in the country going into last season, and then, well, we know how that went. The problem is he has a history of just leveraging teams for money, straight up. He went into the transfer portal after 2024 to leverage a new deal, and then when Jermod McCoy went down, he, instead of stepping up for the team, held out more to leverage more money because, let's face it, they needed him. Then he went into the portal because Tennessee didn't retain a staff member that he liked, allegedly, so good luck, Mike Elko. Hope you can deal with that. Hopefully he can get his head on straight and be an elite player once again. I do want to give a shout out to Tafiq Bryan. He is a big, physical box safety who I would expect to see take the field quite a bit this year. He's a sure tackler, which is going to be welcomed in the secondary because that was an issue last year, and we'll talk about that when we get to the unit. But given the depth chart, I think he'll be splitting time with returning starter Marcus Radcliffe and returning starter Dalton Brooks. But if he keeps hitting like he did in their spring game, then this is going to be a problem. Speaking of the spring game, if you didn't see it, projected starter Damian Sanford did get hurt there and will probably miss some of the season in 2026, which paves the way for transfer from Tulsa Ray Coney to step in at linebacker. Ray Coney is one of those guys to keep your eyes on. He has FBS size at 6'2", 240 pounds, and he can thump. I mean, typically with G6 guys, I worry about the height, weight, speed difference, but it's not so much with him. I think he's got it. Coney had 126 tackles last season, so there's proven production in the box. I don't think he's the most natural coverage linebacker, like the dropbacks look a little stiff to me. He's also very aggressive, so there's things that are going to need to get cleaned up, but I trust this staff to mold linebackers well, so this is a player that in the absence of Sanford will probably see a bigger role. That wraps up most of the important transfers. Obviously, there are some other guys that I weren't able to get to, but sadly with these videos, we would be here for probably 3 hours if I broke down every single player on the roster and every single transfer, but hopefully it gives you the highlights of guys to keep your eyes on and really watch going into this year that might turn out to be good starters and potential NFL players for this team. With all of that noise about the transfers out of the way, let's get into grading this roster that they have, because they have some really good units and some units with some big question marks, and we'll talk about them all in depth now. Starting off, we have their quarterback room, which is headlined by Marcel Reed, Chance, chill, as they say. He had this fan base going absolutely crazy after their comeback victory against LSU in 2024 when Reed replaced Connor Wegman, who was having a the lights were too bright type of a game. I truly don't know why we gassed him up after this game, and that's no diss to him, but A&M could have handed LSU the playbook, told them they were running zone read the whole time, and the LSU defense would have just had this playing in their head on loop. I don't know how it's possible to be so unprepared for the zone read, especially considering Jalen Milroe went out there and ran for like 200 yards on them later that season. Reed struggled to complete the forward pass at the end of 2024, but in 2025 he really did take steps. I mean that, I don't want to say huge strides, but there were definitely steps for sure, and he looked like a better player. Looking back on it, it's a miracle that they beat Notre Dame. Genuinely a miracle with how he played in that game. I thought it was really ugly. It was overthrow after bad decision, but Reed started to look better. I mean, South Carolina was an interesting game, but there were also dagger throws like this one that were really important and ended up leading their comeback. As a runner, he is electric, and I'll talk about that. If you want to see my full video reviewing him, then you can check that out on my TikTok. I'll also link that in the description as well. Unfortunately, Reed ended the season the same way as it started, though, with two really bad games against Texas and Miami. In the Texas game, he did get hurt, and Miami had some wild weather conditions, so I won't dig too deep on his throws, but the decision-making really plagued them in this game. I have to give a shout out to his rushing ability, though. He is elite there. I no other way to put that. One of the best running quarterbacks in college football. He will take dudes' ankles every single game. He is electrically fast. I've seen him in person play, and when you see the speed in person, it's different than on TV. I mean, he can just take off on a dime. His burst is incredible. His ability to plant his foot and cut is incredible. Like, I know I sound like I'm glazing now, but he really is one of the best running quarterbacks in college football. If he's able to add on a little bit of weight, I would be more happy about that, but he's very slender, so it does make me nervous if he takes big hits, but he also does a great job of avoiding hits, so that does matter. My grade for this room is a B, with a massive asterisk that is elevated by his rushing ability. I think it's only fair to factor that in. We're looking at quarterbacks as a whole, and a lot of that is their ability to run the football if they can. So if we were grading him as a passer, it'd be a C, but I'm giving this room a B because he elevates the team with that way. The running back room is led by Ruben Owens, who is a former 5-star recruit and was one of the most electric backs in the country coming out of high school, truly. As a freshman, he got around 100 touches, averaged a little less than 4 yards a carry, which isn't groundbreaking, but A&M wasn't very good that year, and he was still a true freshman, so we'll cut him some slack there. He ended up being on the SEC All-Freshman team, but he did suffer an injury in his sophomore season that would set him back, and he wouldn't take the field until the Texas game. We basically already got to see what a backfield led by Ruben Owens looks like because Le'Veon Moss just can't stay healthy, so we got insight into this. I think it was clear that he was still recovering from his injury, though, because he just didn't have that power yet that he had from before. I think it's interesting to see what he'll become next year now that he should be fully healthy. He's a guy who's gonna have to live up to that 5-star title. I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid, but he's not exactly been what this A&M fan base was expecting, and I don't think that's too wild to say. Owens is not a bad player. He's still very dynamic in space. He had some really nice games for A&M. This 57-yard run against Mizzou was great, and you're hoping you'll see a couple more of these next year. He also recorded 142 yards on 21 touches against Mississippi State, so there's examples of him producing with a good workload. It's just frustrating to watch him sometimes because he cannot break a tackle to save his life. He takes the always fall forward to another level, and sometimes he just falls. Like, I don't know what the reason is. I don't know why it happens. It just sucks. If he can gain some strength and some contact balance, I think he'll be pretty good. I don't know the full solution here. I just know that if this A&M backfield is going to be truly elite, then Owens is going to have to step up. I'm still going to grade this backfield a B because I think Owens is a good player. He's a good college running back. I don't think he elevates this team to a crazy level, but when you combine him with Marcel Reed and the backup Jamarian Moreau, that's a pretty good backfield. Like, I would rate that a B. It's a solid room. Then we get to the wide receiver core, and I talked about Isaiah Horton earlier, but I'll use this time to highlight a trio of guys they have returning in Mario Craver, Ashton Bethel-Roman, and more or less Terry Bussey. Mario Craver's a guy that I did a Patreon exclusive breakdown on, but I'll take this chance to talk about him a little bit. He is a dynamic yards after catch player who I think deserves a bigger role in the downfield passing game. We saw some good examples of him being more than a gadget player, but Colin Klein just kind of restricted him into that role. Now, to his credit, he had 1,000 yards doing this, so there's no reason not to use him there. But I do think that the get him in orbit motion, get everyone going one way, then you flip the ball back to him role is going to get old for him, and I think he has the case to do more with his speed and elusiveness. He is small, just 5'9", 165, so he is limited as a prospect, but he's a really fun weapon in this offense, and I think that he and Isaiah Horton complement each other better than he and Concepcion did, because Concepcion just felt like a bigger version of Craver at times. The guy that will be competing with Craver for some of these schemed up design touches is Terry Bussey, who I'm honestly shocked hasn't transferred out at this point. I do have the ultimate respect for Bussy, but I remember them kind of being a positionless player coming into college. He ended up as a receiver, and now he's just kind of been buried. There was room for both Concepcion and Craver last year, so I would assume there's room for Bussy and Craver this year, but the core is pretty deep. Bussy is another one of these flip him the ball and let him do his thing type of players. He had 18 catches for 195 yards and a touchdown last season, and if you're in his spot, you would really hope for an increase in touches there. He was on the field too. Plays were just rarely designed for him. He did record 400 yards in kickoff returns, so I would imagine he can continue to expand that role, but for the prospect he was, you'd hope he's more than just a kick returner. Bussy's ceiling is also capped by the presence and emergence of Ashton Bethel Roman last year, and he's one of those guys that pops on tape when you watch him. He had a breakout game against Arkansas, and then he didn't let up after that with his big play ability. The stats for the season aren't eye-popping, but catches like this one are. I remember flipping out when I saw this on TV. He also had a big role in their comeback against South Carolina, catching a touchdown and then nearly getting hurt on this play. I think the talent for him is off the charts, and I would expect him to increase his role in the next year. He has a really good release package for such a young player. I think he'll play a big role for A&M, if not this season, then next for sure. The wide receiver room gets an A grade for me. I don't really have an issue handing this out. I don't think there's one elite player that raises it to an S tier grade, but it's a really solid trio slash foursome, whatever you call that, of receivers, and I think this is a great group. The A&M tight end room looks brand new. They do have Kyoto Armstrong returning, who's a former top 160 recruit, 6'5", 275 pounds, so he's entering the swing tackle territory, to be honest with you. I don't have any film on him since he did redshirt last year, but he's in the room, and based on the depth chart, he'll get to see the field. I was debating betting on the upside with this room and giving it a B, but I'm gonna go ahead and roll with a C just because I truly don't know what this room will look like. You've got two G6 guys coming in, which on paper could be good, but there's a lot to adjust to there when you go from playing at Fresno State and a UTSA to coming into play at Texas A&M and Kyle Field every other week. That's a lot of pressure for these guys, and I'm really interested to see how it'll turn out. For the offensive line, the only guy that's returning is Mark Nebo Jr., who should be starting at center. He gets an extra year of eligibility after medically redshirting in 2024 due to a torn ACL that he suffered. He's a big dude. He's 6'4", 330 pounds. It shows in his play. I think he's really strong. He has a great anchor. He's a great pass protector. I still expect him to be good in 2026, if anything better than he was. I did see him struggle a bit with quickness. Like, he's much better as a sit back and block power rusher or in run blocking where he can get ahead and bury someone type of a player. But other than him, the other offensive linemen here are question marks. And I've said it before in the transfer section, there is a lot of risk with this. I'm kind of surprised that this was the method they took to rebuild the offensive line. To me, this will make or break Texas A&M's season. For Marcel Reed, it is important that he stays upright and he has guys up there that are going to block and give him time to process if he's going to get better as a processor, or be guys that are going to help him in the run game and be great run blockers. And Alabama's running game was pretty bad. LSU's running game was pretty bad. You're bringing in 3 projected starters there that were part of offensive lines that could not run block, and that's what your offensive identity has to be if you're Texas A&M. Because of those reasons, I gave this unit a C. I even bordered on a D here, but I didn't want to be that aggressive because I think there is still potential for these players. I don't think they're all that bad, and A&M's offensive line coach, Adam Cushing, is great. I do think there's something to say that they're going to get probably the best coaching that they've ever had for being an offensive lineman, so I'm optimistic. I went with a C here because on paper it doesn't look the best, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to grade this offense overall a B. I think that they're good. I think there's a lot left to prove for Marcel Reed, and I think this offensive line could leave some question marks here for this team. If they don't gel, this could all fall apart. I think the receiver core is great. They're going to help Marcel Reed out. They're going to make big plays. This offense could be an A-tier unit if that all gels, but just to be safe, I'm going with a B here. I think it's fair to have those questions. For the defensive line, I covered the transfers earlier, but they're returning 3 guys who played quite a bit last year in TJ Searcy, Marco Jones, and DJ Hicks. I had time to watch TJ Searcy and DJ Hicks more than I did Marco Jones, but they're all very solid players. TJ Searcy started opposite of Cassius Howell, and I thought he was good. He's a solid SEC starter. I don't know if he has much more room to grow. He seems like a high floor, low ceiling type of a player. There's nothing wrong with that though. He'll be a senior this season. He's never had eye-popping stats at A&M or at Florida where he started, but like I said, this is a solid starter. Then there's DJ Hicks, who was a big recruit, former 5-star in the 2023 class. He's pretty good. I don't know if he's what you dream your 5-star defensive tackle turning out as, but overall he's a very solid player. There are flashes where you can see why he's a 5-star. I mean, he's 6'3", 300 pounds, quick off the ball. It's just a consistency thing for him. Like, there's a lot of reps where he didn't look strong enough to me. It's a similar story with him as a pass rusher. I actually think I like him more there though. Like, there's some great reps in this area. I'm optimistic about Hicks, especially as a pass rusher. Even if he's not a top 5 defensive tackle in the sport, I think he's still really good and he raises the ceiling of this room. Overall, the defensive line gets a B from me, and it's a high B. It's pretty good. If I could give it a B+, I would, but I'm going to try to keep it in tiers of S, A, B, C, D. I just don't think there's a game-changing, dominant player that could raise this room to an A, which is why I'm rolling with a B, because I think it's a lot of solid depth. Now, I'll be fair. If you asked me about this group last year before the season, I probably would have said the same thing. Thought it was a lot of good players, but we didn't know that Tyler Onyedim and Cassius Howell were going to go out and be second and third round picks, respectively, and dominate SEC teams. The linebacker core is a little interesting right now. We talked about Ray Coney earlier, who's going to have to step up and be a guy right away, but we also have Noah McHale, who did play last season. Not enough for me to really go and grade him out, though, just 16 total tackles on the year. I know that he'll be a key piece in the defense, though. He had a pick 6 in their spring game, which was an impressive drop back. I think there's something here for McHale, but too early to say for me. I'm going to bet on the potential, though. Then we get Damian Sanford, who had to fill in last year for Scooby Williams after he got injured and was lucky to play next to Torian York, who is now off to the NFL. Sanford is a really aggressive linebacker. He's fun to watch. I think he's good in space. He's got a good mix of speed and size, but it's interesting to see because when Scooby Williams went down, I think there was a fair bit of concern about what this linebacker room is going to look like, but Sanford stepped up and he played really well. He does need to get better at taking on blocks. Like we see here, he gets erased by Nick Townsend, and if you know Texas football, he's a fun athlete, but he's not exactly known for being the best blocker. This isn't just a Sanford issue, though. These linebackers were aggressive, they crash hard, it leads to busted plays. We'll talk about this in the scheme section, but he contributed to a lot of busted runs for them, and he's going to need to improve. The problem with Sanford is that he underwent surgery for a lower body injury that he suffered during the spring game, so he's going to miss some of the season, and Ray Coney is going to have to step up and prove that he is FBS ready. Without the injury to Sanford, I'd probably give this room an A, but because of the uncertainty there, once again, I'm giving it a B. You'll notice there's a lot of question marks, and to be fair, all of these question marks could disappear when the season starts, but looking at it right now, I'm rolling with a B for this group. The best aspect of this A&M defense to me, though, is the secondary. I think they have some really talented guys there, especially with the transfers and the guys they have returning, and I'll start off with Des Ricks. He gets gassed up a lot. I don't fully see it with him. I mean, I think he's a solid player. He improved a lot from last year, but if you ask me my thoughts on 2024 Des Ricks, I'd say liability. If you ask me my thoughts on 2025 Des Ricks, I say highly improved player. I think he gets caught lacking a bit on double moves, but he has really good recovery speed. He's a grabby corner. I don't know how he gets away with it here in this play, but I digress. I honestly thought he was better off as his off-zone corner, where he's kind of able to keep things in front of him and then flip his hips and drop back when he knows for sure he's going to get a target deep. His tackling's a bit of a question mark for me. I do think that's something he's going to have to improve at because it got really rough at times. But overall, he's a good corner. I think that 90% of FBS programs would be happy with him starting on their team. He's twitchy, he's fluid, he has the physical traits that make you successful at cornerback, but I think the mental side and the emotional side of the game has another step to go for him. Something to note about him and the secondary as a whole is the lack of interceptions. Just 1 in 2024, 1 in 2025. It's not like he didn't get targeted either. I mean, teams threw his way and he really wasn't able to capitalize. Not everything is based on interceptions, but I do think that generating turnovers is important. Then we have the two safeties with Dalton Brooks and Marcus Radcliffe. Both of them are very versatile. They can play in the box or deep. Radcliffe is a really willing tackler and Brooks is not so much. Maybe not willing isn't the right word, but he takes a lot of bad angles and he just isn't as strong with bringing his body through and landing the hit. As a coverage defender, though, I do think he is really good. I think Marcus Radcliffe is the better of the two. He'll fly to the football, hit stick receivers. He's not afraid to come down and make big plays. He'll step into the box. Now, I can't always say he takes the best angles, but when he gets there, he's a good run stopper, and I like the attitude and edge that he plays with. I'm going to give this secondary an A. Like, there are my concerns with them, particularly in their tackling and letting big plays, but the talent here is really good. And overall, they do their job so well, and I think they should be better this year. But based on experience in the system, growing as players, having 3 returning starters, I think this unit deserves their flowers for what they could become. This, to me, is an A-tier unit in the SEC. For the defense, one of the things to keep in mind is that their success does partially come from Mike Elko. There are good players, for sure, on this roster, but Mike Elko does raise the floor of them with his blitz packages, with his coverages, with his great defensive mind. He can get guys in the right position to make plays that maybe they're not the fastest or the strongest, but he can get them in a position to where they can use their strength to make a play. I'm going to give this defense an A overall because of that. When we factor in coaching, we factor in scheme, we factor in how this unit plays together, I think this is a great unit. This is a top half, top 5, maybe top 3 defense in the SEC when everything clicks together. So A-tier unit for me. I really like what I see here, and I think they'll be good again. I do think there's some question marks just like the offense, but I'm a little more comfortable with the defense than I am the offense. Now let's talk scheme, and we'll start off with the defense because Mike Elko's defense isn't changing. They're going to be basically the same as they were last season. Obviously, some things might adjust over time, but for this, we're going to focus on two specific things, and those are their blitz packages and their run defense. A&M allowed just a 22.9% conversion rate on third downs last year, which was good for first in the country. It was my biggest concern when Texas played them. Like, how do you succeed against a team that can stop you basically every time on third down? Part of the reason they were so successful is because they earned the right to be there, ranking top 10 in first down defense. They got teams into third and long a lot, and that allowed them to run these really unique blitz packages and simulated pressures that took away time for routes to develop downfield. Now, typically when you hear a first down success rate of that high, you think that they can stop the run really well, but they were only 40th in rush defense, which is really weird to have those metrics together. Part of this is because they let up a lot of big plays, a lot of explosive runs. That's what leads into that when you kind of have to skew the metrics a little bit. They are a 4-2-5 base defense primarily. They stay in nickel almost all the time. Sometimes they'll bring on 3 linebackers. They don't really have one set coverage that they run. You look at teams like Indiana, they're a cover 3 football team. Teams like Oregon, they're a cover 3 Tampa 2 football team. A&M, they'll run anything. Sometimes they'll be in man-to-man, which is probably what they play primarily if I had to choose something. They'll run some of the man-match pattern principles that we talked about in the Ole Miss video. But the main thing that they're successful at is blitzing. That's how they get off the field on third down, and we're going to talk about their different blitz packages and how they scheme them up. We'll start off with this really creative play early in the game against A&M. What we've got here is 2 sevens, a 2-eye, and a 5 technique. Now they will do this to stress out the guard because naturally, Markel Bell is going to have to take Cassius Howell. Inez Cooper is going to have to essentially play like a tackle to get out wide enough and fast enough to block DJ Hicks. Miami has the numbers to block this up. You'll see it when the play begins. The tight end takes the blitzing linebacker and Mark Fletcher goes out to the flats. On top of this though, they're going to wrap Cassius Howell. And Beck makes a good decision to just throw the slant here, get the ball out, but it's well covered and now we force an incompletion on 3rd and 5. We're off the field. This is another fun one where they mess with Miami's slide and they force them into an unfavorable spot. Now this is on a 2nd and 2 with 10 seconds left in the half. Do you know how many football teams would just back in a shell and try to take away the end zone, force a field goal and call it a day? Not this team. Miami has to slide their protection to the side with the bigs, the defensive linemen. They are priority number 1 to match up with your offensive linemen. So we'll see the slide happen this way between the center, guard, and tackle. They drop Cassius Howell here and then they loop Damian Sanford. So now we've got the left side taken care of. They're sliding and creating a huge gap in the middle of the line, and we've only got Mark Fletcher to block whoever comes through. The problem is we get 2 guys through because on the right side we've got this corner firing, and then we've got a twist with Torian York in this end. Earlier I said we want big on big, and well, now you've got your left tackle on a corner, your guard on a 5'10 linebacker, and then Mark Fletcher is left to take on the 250-pound defensive end and a linebacker at the same time. So obviously not an ideal situation. What Elko will also use a lot is the 5-0-5 alignment, and simply put, that is as it sounds. 2 5 techniques and a 0 technique serve as the base for the defense. We get these 3 bigs on the field, and then we place the other defenders around them like chess pieces. They can be walked up, outside the ends, anywhere you want. This is what they're going to do on most third downs, and in this specific case, we don't have anyone walked up, but this is what it looks like in a shell. Here's an example of it. We've got Cassius Howell outside, then we have our 5-0-5 along the offensive line. Auburn is going to do a 4-man slide to the side of Cassius Howell. On this specific play, I do think Auburn beats themselves, but Elko still forces them to make this decision. Where are you going to place your numbers? We're in empty. They've got a mug linebacker, a corner ready to go, and another backer walking down. What we end up getting is Cassius Howell dropping, Torian York dropping, and Sanford coming, which happens to be 5 guys. We have 5 linemen, we can block this, but because of the threat of Cassius Howell, we have to send guys his way. So when we drop into coverage, we artificially cleared a lane to bring 2 guys on his side, and then Dalton Brooks ends up getting the sack. Here we get this front again, the 5-0-5 with Howell as the stand-up rusher. On paper, we can block this. We have a hat for every hat. If you noticed a common theme in his blitzes, it's to get the safety home. This happens multiple times now in just a few clips that I've shown you, but we'll start in the middle. York is going to drop back. Sanford is going to rush instead. And what we've done here is force the protection to account for York because he's there. I mean, we have to. But we're going to take advantage of this, and while eyes are turned his way, Sanford is going to sprint to fill the gap. Luckily for Auburn, the back does a great job of picking him up, but on the other side, we now have 2 guys on 1. This safety can come running free without even getting touched. Now, Tyler Arnietem is a freak. He's able to sprint to Jackson Arnold and make this tackle. This is what you need DJ Hicks to become if you're an A&M fan. Now, when you combine all of this with a player like Cassius Howell, who can beat most college tackles one-on-one, then you have a true recipe for success. Hopefully those few clips give you an insight on how Mike Elko changes the math and is really able to get his guys in favorable positions, using the threat of blitzers, simulating pressures, or sometimes just bringing it with all of them in gaps that you can't block. He doesn't really have a player like Cassius Howell this year, I don't think. I don't think there's a Tyler Onyedem either, but it doesn't really matter because we can place these guys in positions to be successful. On the other side of things though, we have their run defense, and that was much more questionable, many more things to critique here. So I praised the blitz packages, now we'll look at some of the downsides of this defense, and that's in their run defense, and a lot of it stems from their linebackers. We'll go through the biggest runs from the Texas game and the Miami game, starting off with this Quintravion Wisner run to open up the second half. Ultimately, it comes down to over-aggression in their run fits and losing integrity. Sanford is going to crash down to meet Connor Robertson, and instead of giving him any hesitation or trying to stack, he just crashes into him. On the other side, Tyler Onyedem is going to just peek the wrong way, which gives Trey Wisner a massive opening here. Texas has a hat-on-hat for every player except for Will Lee. When you're not able to stack and shed, this is what happens. So sure, you might turn this into a 2nd and 5 by giving some ground, but at least we're not letting up a 40-yard explosive due to over-aggression and just crashing downhill with no one to fill gaps behind you. Next, we'll talk the touchdown run from Arch Manning. The first note about this play is that I'm dumbfounded that they were not prepared for this. The second that Jack Andrews went in motion, watching this in the stadium, I called this is a quarterback run. It's 3rd and short, it's Arch Manning. Texas is going to do this. That is a tendency for them, and it's wild to me that A&M did not pick up on that. We just get, yet again, a really similar situation. These defensive linemen are getting beat pretty fast, and they're not able to establish themselves. York is unable to fill his gap, and Arch takes a really good cut to fake out Dalton Brooks, and he's off to the races. Then we'll talk about the run that ended the game. We see a combo of all the problems I talked about. Sanford's going to crash downhill heavy and just get taken out by a second effort from Trevor Gooseby. This is one of the few times that the Texas offensive line actually manhandled guys, and their run fits were off the whole game, whether it was linebackers crashing too hard, defensive tackles not holding their gap, DBs not tackling, it all added up. Let's switch over to the Miami game now, and this game was much more broken assignments rather than just bad angles or not being able to get off of blocks. We'll begin with this run pretty early where they're going to use a run blitz on 1st down. We can call this a run blitz because York is sprinting to the spot as the ball is snapped, not rushing to fill or plug a gap based on the play. That in itself is fine, but it's what the other defenders do that's the problem. See, Regis is going to slant here and take away the B gap, which once again is fine. That's his assignment. If York isn't able to plug his A gap, and he's a 5'10 linebacker, so the chances of that are slim, Damian Sanford should be reading the play, able to cover this gap as reinforcement. We need you back here because Marcus Radcliffe is already sprinting downhill to fill his A gap. We've got this tackle plugging the B gap, and if he bounces, we've got contain. The only thing you cannot do is charge the same gap as Marcus Radcliffe, and that's exactly what we do. Just over-aggression, a misfit gap causes a big run. Then this here is the huge Mark Fletcher run that effectively ends their season. We're going to see what's, in my opinion, another mistake from Sanford because he's executing a run blitz. The problem with this is the shoulder that he attacks. Why are we attacking the center's left shoulder when that's the side that we have help on? Now, unless this defensive tackle was supposed to try and get inside but instead goes outside, I get it, but it's probably not him. In this case, we crash the side that we have the help on. We have no help out here because the motion of CJ Daniels removes Marcus Radcliffe from the box. Now, Torian York doesn't have a gap, and he would have to be fast enough to sprint all the way across the line to stalk Mark Fletcher, and it clearly doesn't happen. So once again, we misfit our assignment, we don't charge the right side of our gap, and we give it up. Big run, game over. So this A&M defense is really good. We see that from the scheme. There's just some things within their run fits that they've got to fix if they want to stop letting up these huge explosives next year and possibly lose games the way that they did in 2025. Now let's flip to the offense, where the biggest change is happening, but I still don't think it'll be that bad because we're losing Colin Klein in his play calling, but a lot of the schemes will be very similar. I don't think Holman Wiggins is going to change up too much. Colin Klein offenses want to run. It all starts with that. He's got plenty of creative ways to do it. They'll run just about every concept in the book, starting off with this GY counter against Notre Dame. On the goal line and short yardage, they're going to run a lot of power, a lot of ISO, just slam the ball into the end zone, which sometimes got A&M fans pissed off, and I get it. Something they will do more of next year is this pin and pull concept, which I would love to explain more of the details of these schematics in a separate video, but for the sake of time, you'll just have to take my word for it and watch it here. You'll see a lot of split zone. I mean, I meant it when they said they will run about every run concept you can possibly think of, which makes it really hard to stop this team because you've got to be prepared to fit all of these runs. It doesn't work here, but the zone read is a huge aspect of this team's identity. If you ask LSU, they'd probably tell you they don't know what that is, but let's all be smarter than LSU today. Here's another example of the zone read with the quarterback where he has the option to hand this off or keep it based on what the defensive end does. They call this play in a lot of creative ways. I'm not going to go over all of them today, but just know that Marcel Reed has the option on quite a few of his runs. They look to get a lot of different personnel groups on the field. This is a really fun two-back set that they're running. This places immediate stress on the defense because we can't play it like it's empty, but we also can't play it like it's not empty. Klein is going to motion Owens and then run a quarterback counter from it, and this fake removes the backer from the box. And while we've got the defense flowing towards Owens, we're going to keep the ball in the counter. Just some fantastic play design right here. Then we'll follow it up with this play, which features a similar design, but once these linebackers bite, we're going to get Rueben Owens up the seam, and it's just a complementary offense, complementary play calling. This is what Holman Wiggins needs to lean into. Of course, their running game complements their passing game. When you get people to play the box, you have to account for the fact that they're gonna run the ball well. Then you get chances for one-on-one shots, and they'll take them. They want to stretch the field. They want to chase explosives. Klein loved to use motion to get the speedy duo of receivers the ball with space. Here we're gonna motion Craver over, and while this corner is still getting to the spot, we'll just have him run a little stick route, get up and go. Here's the next play where Concepcion is gonna run this sail. This is just a great design from Klein, and you know that Notre Dame is gonna run cover 3. They're gonna run man. They don't do a lot else. Because nobody moves on him with the motion, we probably know they're not a man-to-man, so then we know what coverage they're in. Concepcion runs a great route to get behind him, but it's just a really simple concept knowing what the defense is doing. Here's another one where he uses motion to stack Concepcion and Mario Craver. This one is just a great design from Klein. He's going to use Concepcion and his man to basically wall off this other defender, which creates automatic separation for Craver. He doesn't even need to do anything. He just gets to catch the ball and run wild. Downfield, this passing game is going to emphasize deep overs and crossing routes. I think some of Colin Klein's best work comes from his man beaters. This play isn't a good example, but I'll pull up some others. Like this one, similar concept to what Craver got earlier, where Concepcion is going to help create this split second of separation by cutting off Christian Gray from breaking on his route to Terry Bussey. There's also the really simple staple plays that are in every playbook, like mesh spot. We're going to get these two crossing routes here. We're going to get a clear out and then the spot from the tight end. It's the oldest trick in the book, but the timing here is part of the reason it's so effective. We've got a 2nd and 8 and we have 7 guys in the box. Those extra defenders create a lot of traffic and a lot of chaos for the defense to work through. So we're going to take advantage of a defense that we know is in man, probably expecting a run, and then we're going to let our playmakers run to grass after. We talked about Colin Klein's flaws as a play caller earlier with some really head-scratching examples, but his scheme is good, and I think Holman Wiggins should lean into that. There's not a lot to change here. You're going to want to get Marcel Reed some more easy opportunities. I think that is something they could improve at, is some more stick routes, more RPO, just getting the ball out of his hands fast, not making him sit in the pocket and read and throw the ball deep downfield. That's not really his strength. We're going to want to lean into his legs and his ability to control an offense, which I talk about in my TikTok review of him. All right, Aggies, we have broken down every aspect of your team. We've looked at the coaching, the transfers, your roster, your scheme. Now let's get into your 2026 schedule predictions. We open up a game against Missouri State, easy win, no need to talk here. Then they have their non-conference matchup against Arizona State. While I don't think Arizona State will win, I do think they'll be a good team. I think Kenny Dillingham is good enough to get this team to 7 or 8 wins, maybe even 9. I also like what Cutter Boley is. I think he showed some potential at Kentucky last year. Big athletic quarterback with a lot of potential. Maybe they pull off a shocker here, but I still think A&M wins this game pretty handily at the end. Next, they open up SEC play against Kentucky at 2:30 p.m., so get ready for the heat. I think they win this game. Kentucky could be really good under Will Stein, but it'll probably take more time than just week 3 with him. CJ Baxter, give him hell. Then they open up on the road against LSU, and what a game, man. A&M has honestly owned LSU the past 2 years. It's been really ugly. But this is a new regime for LSU, and I do think that they get the win. I'm not going to say there's any pent-up aggression or pent-up energy here from losing the past 2 years, but I just think that LSU will be a better team. They'll be coming off the loss to Ole Miss, if you followed my Ole Miss predictions, and I think that they get the win in Death Valley. If this was in Kyle Field, probably be a different scenario, but in this case, LSU wins. Then they're back at home to take on Arkansas. This will be Arkansas's first time at Kyle Field in a long time after ending the run of neutral site games. Unfortunately, I just don't think Arkansas is in a position to win, and I think this one could get a little ugly. Then A&M goes on the road to play Mizzou, and poor Mizzou. I feel like in every video I'm gonna pick the team to beat Mizzou. It's just how it is. I feel like they're a good team, but not a great team, and any team in the top 10 should beat them pretty comfortably. I think A&M wins here, maybe not as ugly as last year, but it's still a win for them. Then in October, they play the Citadel. Yes, the Citadel. Whatever. Then they go on the road to play Alabama, and I think this is their signature road win. This game will be electric, especially if it gets the night slot. I just don't fully trust Alabama. I mean, a lot could change, but to me, there's a lot of unknowns with Bama right now. There's a lot of unknowns with A&M too, but I'm not sure about this Alabama team, man. I think being in Bryant-Denny does make a difference. It would not shock me if A&M lost this game, just because I think Alabama will be pretty charged up at home. But I think A&M can get another signature road win in the past 2 years and knock off Alabama at Bryant-Denny. After their win against Alabama, they run into a trap game at South Carolina. I've seen this one before, but luckily for A&M, this game is during the day, so Cockvember does not strike. The Aggies get the win. Next, they get Tennessee at home, and unfortunately for Tennessee, I just don't think they have what it takes here. Another example of if this game was in Neyland, we might be talking about a different story, but I don't know if this roster is good enough to beat Texas A&M at Kyle Field this season. Maybe we'll be surprised with who their quarterback ends up being, but I just think Texas A&M is better and they get the win. I will note about the Tennessee game. If Jim Knowles' defense gets clicking and they're able to confuse Marcel Reed, this could be a random game that they drop. If A&M's going to have a Texas 8-4 type season, then this will probably be the one that they lose, in my opinion. Then the Aggies go on the road to Norman, Oklahoma and play the Sooners. This is a game where I'd love to choose a nuclear missile instead of a winner, but I'm going to go with Evil 1 over Evil 2. In all seriousness, I think Oklahoma does win this. I think Brent Venables' defense will have Marcel Reed in a bit of a bind this game unless he takes massive strides. I just think the Oklahoma defense will pull this game off for them. Offenses might combine for 5 interceptions and 1 touchdown, but this will be a sickos game to watch if it plays out how I think it will. Finally, they end their season with Texas at home. I'm blessed enough to have been to a Texas versus Texas A&M game at Kyle Field. It was the first one back 2 years ago. Thank God for student tickets because that won't be the case this year, but it was really fun. It was probably a top 5 game experience for me and the one at DKR. Both Texas versus Texas A&M games were top 5, maybe even top 3 football game experiences that I've been to. They're so much fun. Part of that is because of the outcome, I must admit, but regardless of that, this rivalry is alive, it is passionate, it is awesome. After we beat A&M last year, I thought that next season would probably be a loss for Texas and that the pendulum would have to swing. I don't know if I see that happening now. I'll break this game down to the ends of the earth during the season, like as in depth as possible, but for now, I'm gonna pick Texas to win. I think that the talent that they went out and got is really damn good, and I'll give it to A&M. I think they can compete. I think they can make this game close. It would not shock me at all if they ended up winning, but I'm gonna go with Texas again. I think A&M picks up their 3rd loss here, and they end the season at 9-3. And I wanna preface this. This is not a failure. This is not regression. This is not being bad. This does not mean the sky is falling. You overachieved last year, and your ceiling this year is probably 11-1. I think 10-2 would be very reasonable for this team if they beat Oklahoma or they beat Texas or they beat LSU. Just winning one of those games puts you at 10-2 and you're probably back in the college football playoff. There are just so many good teams in the SEC and I think there is going to be a little bit of cannibalization this year. It's very hard to win 10 games, especially when you have a tough schedule like A&M does this year. I mean, last year it was a bit easier, but now you've got some really good teams on there and some really tough road games like at Norman and at Tuscaloosa. Those are tough. Like, it would not surprise me if they lost both, but also I think this team could be up for the challenge and I think they could win both. I think this A&M team is really good. There's a reason they're ranked number 9. I look forward to watching them, truthfully. I hope Marcel Reed can continue to develop as a passer and really elevate this offense more. I think he has the wide receiver core to do it, and then obviously he has the defense to lean on to not put a ton of pressure on him to where he can blossom into being a great young quarterback and probably declare for the draft after this season. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll try to be a little more consistent with the release times, but they do take a lot of effort to make. Truly, it's worth every second of it, but a lot of heart and soul goes into these. Please do leave a like and subscribe if you feel like you can do that. It helps me out a lot and just shows the love and allows me to continue to make these videos. Another way to support the channel is over on Patreon. You'll get exclusive content over there. You'll get to request players for me to break down on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. Be sure to subscribe. Don't miss any content. See you guys later.